If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. I just wanted to come on here and I wanted to share my personal experience with, you know, well, how I got into tarot, how I started reading tarot, even though no one asked. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give you my story. And I don't know when this video is gonna come out, but to put out a disclaimer out there, this is just my truth. Um, I'm not trying to slander anybody. Everything that I say here is what happened to the best of my knowledge. This story time is for educational purposes only. I am going to be talking about, magic, tarot, age gaps, even like we gonna go deep, okay? And there is no telling what I will say because I'm a very passionate person, okay? And a different side of me might come out when I tell the story. So I'm gonna just let y'all know right now, like how I discovered the little, I guess, witchy side of me. Um, and I saw tarot actually was when I was younger, and I always used to watch this hip hopper called Carmen, which featured Beyonce, and it was Michael Mackay Pfeiffer. There you go. Mackay Pfeiffer. And there was a scene in the movie where Beyonce was getting a reading from this Jamaican guy, and he was telling her that she was going to die. And he kept pulling the death card. And, the whole song, they were singing a song and whatnot, die. And so she kept pulling the death card. And, like, basically the cards were saying she was going to die. Of course, fast forward to now, I understand that that's not what the death card means all the time. But, you know, I suppose. But yeah. Also, y'all, I got my braces off 2 days ago. It is time for a whitening. I drink tea and coffee and all that, and I be sometimes forgetting to rinse my mouth out with water after I get done, and so my shit is kind of yellow. Tarot like visibly, and then um I would always watch that movie. I liked it so much. And Beyonce looked phenomenal in that movie. Second that I would watch is Sophia the First. Now, Sophia the First is a cartoon about a little girl. She's a princess, and she grew up. She didn't grow up a princess. She became a princess, but first she was a villager. She was poor. She was poor. Okay, and I used to always this show was kind of before my time. I mean, kind of after my time. Excuse me. I would always watch it with my little sister, but even now to this day as an adult I still watch it because that show it's a really deep show for a kid show if you really like get into it. But there was this episode that I loved, that I loved, and it was called The Little Witch, and I always watched it. And my family, of course, my family is like, oh, you shouldn't be watching that, it talks about witches and shit like that, da, 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 da. And it's just like it was just a nice little, cute little, what is it, kind of like a lesson to learn, like, oh, you shouldn't be like, because basically it was about a witch that, she uh was very misunderstood, and because of that, she would do things out of anger, like she would put hexes on people, and everybody was afraid of her. And then eventually, because Sophia helped her out, Sophia was the only one that actually, tried to get to the bottom of why she did what she did. And Sophia realized, oh, she wants friends. She's lonely. And so, then, the little witch, I think her name was Lucinda, she went through this whole like, oh, okay, I'm going to change because someone finally understands why I do what I do. I'm going to change. And then, the episode is about her, like, being, I'm going to be a good little witch. So, and so, I love that episode so much. It was my favorite episode. And I would always watch it. Like, media was like a huge, like, played a huge part in, my taste and like what I liked, like having an interest in the supernatural, talk, like not shying away from, the witches and the tarot cards and the fortune telling, I love that shit. I love that shit. Even as an adult, I love that shit. I like horror movies, okay? Harry Potter, which leads me to my next point. Harry Potter. I had a huge Harry Potter phase. I was obsessed. Like, I was obsessed. Y'all, I loved Harry Potter. How could I not forget? Harry Potter is definitely on the list. Like, and to be honest with you, I'm unclear about, I mean, my house used to be Ravenclaw, right? But I think it's also Gryffindor. I guess I'm a hybrid of both. I'm not sure. But I loved it. I was like, imagine me going to a school for wizards and witches. Like, what? Like, that's so cool. Like, I loved Harry Potter. I all that to say the media aspect of like when it comes to my early childhood, that's commonly, I mention the media aspect because I've read, like that's a common, sign that someone is spiritual or has a spiritual calling, is take the interest in the supernatural very young, and I'm just like, could it be little old me? When I read that, I was like, what's me? Why? You know, but I guess I'll talk more into that later on in the story. But when it came to religion, let's talk about it. When it came to religion, I did not feel like I belonged. And so when I hear psychics, if you will, other stories about, their struggle with religion, I would constantly compare my story and I just be like, but they would say, I didn't like the structure of the church. That's mostly what I would hear when it came to other psychics. They're like, I couldn't like, I didn't like the structure of what church was. I didn't like how people were acting. I didn't like, I just couldn't relate to it. And I'm just like, and so when I was learning, when I was on my spiritual journey, when I guess you could say I had my awakening, I was like, that's not really my story. As a matter of fact, I liked praise and worship. I liked the music and I loved helping out. That was the most part. I loved helping out in the church. Like, I didn't sing. I did sing actually, and what my role was, and when I was in the church was, I was more so like, you know, I would kind of follow my mom or kind of follow my family, whatever they did, But then also when it came to me joining Bible study, and at one point when I was 18, I was helping out a pastor in Inglewood. Um, that was kind of my role. That's the kind of, I guess, role that I took up in the church. Um, so I was like, I can't really relate to that. But as I got older, I realized, looking back, I was like, I never really did feel like I belonged. Actually, I mean, I'm talking about constant anxiety, even as little as what, 4 years old, 5 years old, when I didn't even understand the concept of what anxiety was. Like, I felt it was just, y'all know what anxiety feels like, right? God forbid if you don't. God forbid you do. But it's like, even when I was 4, I remember like talking in front of the whole church. And as a kid, I'm saying, oh, what I'm grateful for. I remember I said I was grateful for my mom, and she goes to work. That's what I said. I remember I was like, I'm grateful for my mom and she goes to work. And even then they're like, oh, they were clapping for the little Samara, right? But then I still felt anxious. I remember feeling very anxious. I'm like, I don't belong here. And even as a teenager, when I was going to church, I was like, I don't feel like I belong here. Like, I'm anxious. Like, why am I constantly always over the edge? And I realized that my experience may differ from other people, but the fact still kind of remains. I didn't feel like I belonged here. Um, I was never at ease, never, even all the way down to praise and worship. If we really want to, talk about it, like even all the way down to praise and worship, I never caught no Holy Ghost. I'm sorry. I never caught no Holy Ghost. I'm sorry. And I'd look around and I see all the ladies scaring me, and I'm just like, and I'm just like, something wrong with me. And God, I don't want to cry, but it's all the way down to, I felt like I didn't love God enough. I felt like I I felt like it wasn't in my heart, to love God because I didn't act like this. Or I like, you know what I mean? And it honestly, it boiled all the way down to, does God even love me? Because like I would like like overthink everything about how I feel about God, how God might feel about me, and it really took a toll on my self-esteem. And that's when I realized that all the way, it would never be a part of God's will to feel like he doesn't love you. And when it came to this cookie cutter way of worshiping God, I felt like it wasn't for me. If I felt like it just, through feeling like I did not belong, the structure made me feel like I didn't belong. The cookie cutter way of worship and prayer, and it made me feel like I was inadequate because I felt like I wasn't capable. You know what I'm saying? But who's to say that this way is the only way? That's what I'm trying to say. Um, but that I was different, I suppose, and the scapegoat as well as the black sheep. Um, Okay, so when I first started my spiritual awakening, I remember it was during the pandemic. It was at the start. I was in eighth grade, and I was homeschooled though because school had closed, and I was towards the end of the year, and I remember I was sitting in my mom's room on her bed, and I was just scrolling through YouTube, like daily routine, and I had come across a channel called 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐀𝐈𝐌𝐄𝐑. This is my first time ever. I remember that the video was titled "This Message Is Meant to Find You." So of course I clicked on it. Instantly, I'm talking about instantly. I was hooked on that tarot, like instantly. So prior, I can't remember. And y'all forgive me because this experience was so traumatic that I may have blocked out some memories. Okay, so some things might be coming to me. You know, some things might leave and go. Honey, I don't know. Okay, I don't know what you're gonna get. Okay, but I don't know if it was before I met the man or after I discovered the video. It was probably before. Probably. I'm not sure. Anyways, so I'm gonna get to. Oh, okay. I wrote the man on Twitter before I wrote Esoteric. Okay. See, my mind. So, um, during this time, I was very young, 13, 14, something along those lines, and I had a habit of talking to older men on social media or meeting older men wherever it was. Like it didn't matter, right? And so I had this habit. And of course, my family loved to call me fast because I would do these things. And to be honest with you, I did not understand why I did it. And of course, you know, I'm hearing this feedback right without the Kanye West, you know, and so I'm beating myself up over this little habit I got. Now that I'm older, I realize, girl, you were lonely. You were lonely. You practically had to raise yourself. There was nobody really in your corner, and you did what you could to get your instant validation. But I had this little habit, and I was called multiple times doing it, and then my devices would get taken away, and all that extra shit. So my mom got me a phone for was it my sixth grade, my sixth grade year. She got me a phone for my sixth grade year, and so I was still doing it, girl. I was still doing it, and so whenever my instant gratification died out from a source, it was on to the next one. Always, I was always a player, honey. I was always a player. You don't get chased, you get replaced. Unless I like you, I gotta like you that much to chase you. I gotta like you that much, and I did. I like this man that much, right? So I was on Twitter. I wasn't supposed to be on Twitter. I was not allowed to have Twitter. My mom was like, "You're not allowed to have Twitter." I was like, "Oh, I did it anyway." I did it anyway. Okay, yes, I was a defiant child. I was a defiant child. I did it. And I'm scrolling, and I find this profile, and it consists of a man smiling. DMs are open. It's a whole bunch of other shit. Media, never mind. Because on YouTube it's called. I mean, not YouTube. Twitter it's called media. Like whenever you post a picture or whenever you post a video, it's called media. And so he's basically. I never knew what that meant until later on. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean media? Never mind. Like, do you have some sort of complex in your mind that I don't know? Like people give a fuck. Like I don't like what do you mean? But then I realized he meant the videos and pictures that he posts are not his. It's not him in the shit, right? And I was just like, oh, okay. I understand now. I understand. So he said DMs open, so I DM'd him, getting myself into more shit, right? And so I'm constantly. I think I remember myself checking to see if he messaged me back. He messaged me back late at night. And he was like, hi. And I was like, and right off the bat, I was like, oh shit. Like, I was my goofy self. I didn't know you were going to respond. Da, 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 da. And right there was when I felt to realize back then, y'all, and I'm still getting better. I still kind of struggle with it a little bit. But even back then, it was all, I did not listen to my body, including my intuition. I didn't listen to my body at all. I never paid attention to my body, what my body felt. I don't know. I don't know why. I just didn't. And a lot of these things that I had to realize when it came all the way down to each other's behavior was I realized later on down the line, like, okay, this was something I need to learn. This was a lesson I needed to learn. Like, come on. So we hit it off immediately. Like, I did not realize how open I was with this man, because usually, even back then when I was talking to strangers, I was reserved to an extent, and I did not understand why. It took me a little bit to be in that energy of goofiness, and it took me a little longer. And so I didn't pay attention to the fact that I was acting this way to a man I did not even know. I never met before. He was just a stranger on the internet. um these goddamn mosquitoes, like, y'all. Wait.